welcome back to Max Reaction. How are you doing today? Hopefully you're having a good day, good start to the year. I wish you many blessings through this year and the rest of your years. Anyway, we're going to react to an Untold Triumph, the story of the 1st and 2nd Filipino Infantry Regiments of U.S. Army. And it's an untold story. It's a story that I haven't actually reacted to yet, but I was reading the comments. I got comments through the YouTube channel that says you must check this documentary out. The world needs to know this story, this untold story. They say it's deep, it's impactful, it's something that you're not going to forget and that you're going to want to share. So we're going to react to this. I'm excited for it. It's very long. It's about an hour long, but we're going to react to it because I think it's important. I think it'll be something that we need to know and we need to share. So if you like the reaction, you like the documentary, don't forget to share this video on your social media so other people can see the story, because it's going to be a story that needs to be told. I trust my subscribers. I trust the people commenting. We're going to learn for ourselves about the story right now. So let's get excited. Let's check this out. Hopefully you have the time to watch the full video. If you don't, come back, finish it. But let's get into this. Let's react to it now, and don't forget to comment down below in the comment section, because I want to know your feelings, your thoughts, what's running through your head as we watch this Triumph Untold story. I really want to know, so let's do this.
The story of the U.S. Army's 1st and 2nd Filipino Infantry Regiments finds its roots in America's colonial relationship with the Philippines. A relationship that began in 1898 with a brutal 5-year war of subjugation.
I hate that war, but it's part of the history. We need to know it.
Once colonized, Filipinos are tutored in American democracy and its blessings. Soon, tens of thousands of Filipinos immigrate to the United States as nationals.
Right.
They come seeking the American dream and are recruited as sources of cheap labor. Once here, they encounter an unexpected wall of racial discrimination and anti-Asian bigotry.
Oh, I hate it. And on a side note, my wife has been here in this country because, as you guys know, she is Filipino from the Philippines. She's been here 4 years now. She experienced a little bit, hate comments and stuff like that were really racist. And even where she works today, she works at a hospital here where we live. She'll have patients come in and say racial slurs to her. She doesn't let them affect her though, because what other people's opinions doesn't matter any to me. It doesn't matter to her. Would we like not to hear it and see that? Yes, hell yes, we don't want to see racism, but it even happens today. It even happens today. And my wife does a really good job of just ignoring it, laughing it off, and saying, whatever you think can't affect what I'm doing now, So I hate that racist is part of the history, but it is part of the history, and we can't forget it. We shouldn't forget it. But I think we can forgive it. Let's keep going.
In 1934, in an orchestrated move to drive Filipino immigrants back to the Philippines, a racist piece of legislation revokes their national status.
That's terrible.
Now classified as aliens, unable to vote, own land, or join the army, Filipinos face a bleak future in America.
And I don't blame Filipinos for maybe being angry of the past, but a lot of the Filipinos I encounter, they say that's water under the bridge, that's history a long time ago. We can be friends now, just treat each other right. And I appreciate all the comments that I get from even my YouTube family that has said that, because it makes me, even though I wasn't involved in this, I'm still American, so it's still part of my country's history, and forgive us for it, because I'm gonna apologize for what's happened in the past, because it's ridiculous. Filipinos fought for us, and stuff like this. We went over that act in another video. They were promised a lot of things, and then the promise was gone. It's just really ridiculous. It really hurts my heart.
That is, until a monumental event changes their lives forever.
December 7th, 1941, the Hawaiian Islands.
I heard a youngster yell, jumping up in the air, and I looked up on the hill, and there was my younger brother, who was about 7 at the time, jumping and saying, "War! War!" And I said, "What's the matter with him?" And he kept saying, "June, it's war! War!" Turn on the radio.
The bombings.
I saw a dive bomber
Pearl Harbor.
over the Pearl Harbor and diving towards the ships that were in harbor.
Vicious attack. Vicious attack.
It must have struck the ships because there was a lot of smoke. As it overturned, there was a sea of white going over with the ship. A whole bunch of sailors that had to were dislodged from the ship.
We had a family
Dark
of
day.
5 boys and 2 girls, so we were all in the parlor listening to what was happening, and of course wondering what next.
Philippine Islands.
Hours after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the Japanese attacked the Philippines.
And I got to stop this for one more moment. I get a lot of comments saying, that America is the cause of Japan attacking the Philippines. I don't know if that's the case. Like, it's partially true and partially not, because it was going to happen anyway. Japan was going through a bunch of countries, and maybe it happened sooner because there was bases in the Philippines, but sooner or later it was going to happen because the Philippines is in such a strategy spot of the Pacific. It's going to happen. It was going to happen, That's my opinion. You could agree or disagree, but eventually they were coming.
American air bases are destroyed, wiping out all U.S. air power there. Thousands of Japanese troops invade the Philippines from all directions. General Douglas MacArthur, who has been military advisor to the Philippine government since 1935, badly overestimated the capabilities of his mostly civilian army, made up of American and Filipino forces.
Well, although we had training at the military academy, intensive training, both in tactics and military science, we were ill-prepared to go into combat. As far as the other members of the armed forces of the Philippines, they were ill-trained with equipments that were outmoded. It was of World War I model.
Right.
That was the kind of army that we had at the time when the Japanese invaded the Philippines.
As the combined Filipino American forces defend the Philippines, Hawaii and the American mainland prepare for war.
I had a machine gun company, platoon. I had 4 guns. So I had a waterfront, Kahalui Wall, the breakwaters. My platoon was made of American, Japanese, and also Hawaiian, Filipino.
Wow, what a mix.
Portuguese, or the nationality, whatever. Actually, first they came down and told us, that we're going to have to get all these Japanese boys out of your platoon. All of boys that was in the National Guard.
Wow.
They had to go take them away and put them away some other training camp, not with us anymore. And the boys were hurt, I was hurt.
Oh, I bet. They're your comrades, your family.
Because we were brought up, kids.
Right.
In school.
Their family.
We were really close.
On the U.S. mainland, where some 135,000 Filipinos are living, thousands of immigrant men and sons of immigrants are among the first to volunteer to serve in the U.S. Armed Forces.
Many of my father's friends wanted to go in the Army immediately. They wanted to go to the Philippines to seek vengeance.
Right.
Well, the community couldn't understand why we couldn't join the United States Army. A lot of the young people, even the older people, Filipinos who are 40 years old, wanted to get into Army.
In more than a dozen cities around the country, Filipinos hold emergency mass meetings and decide to push for an all-Filipino fighting battalion.
Wow.
They send telegrams to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, Philippine Resident Commissioner Joaquin M. Elizalde, Army Chief of Staff General George C. Marshall, and to members of Congress, asking that their draft status be immediately changed.
That's
We formulated
heroic.
the
Brave.
resolution to Secretary of War Stimson that we wanted in.
In the Philippines, simultaneous Japanese landings overwhelmed General MacArthur.
Too
By
much.
Christmas, the situation looks desperate. His inexperienced army of 160,000 men are no match for the seasoned Japanese troops, even though they have fewer soldiers. Soon, MacArthur orders his men to retreat.
I bet that was hard to do, to retreat, knowing that you're losing the battle. Lose the battle, win the war.
There was an impi. He called after, there's a war coming on. He said, we'll take you back to your outfit. And
Philippine
when I got
scout.
to our barracks, they were already packing.
Wow.
MacArthur ordered us to go to Bataan.
As Philippine and American troops put up a last stand,
We made a
without
video
hope
on
of
that.
reinforcements on the Bataan Peninsula, President Roosevelt orders MacArthur to leave the Philippines. His troops continue to defend their position. They will undergo one of the longest and fiercest sieges of the war.
We heard that MacArthur
Chills.
was going to Australia to command a larger force that would come back and drive the Japanese out of Bataan. Of course, his words of "I shall return" was reached to every soldiers in Bataan, and that
Goosebumps.
gave them the spirit to really keep hanging in there in spite of the incessant attacks of the Japanese.
You have to.
While fighting in Bataan, Camilo Ramirez is captured by the Japanese and held in a prison camp.
During my second nights of
Oh my
captivity,
goodness.
around 2 o'clock or 2:15, that's when I got out. So I ran towards the bushes. I kept running and my head was really pounding. The fever, malaria
Oh.
fever and dengue fever mixed. I saw a road. I said to myself, I followed the ditch towards Manila. I went to the church and pray, God, please get me out of this mess. And I was crying all the time. But when I walked out of the church, I felt so light, as if I was flying. I was so light.
Camilo Ramirez finds his way to
Sad.
Manila and boards a hospital ship bound for Australia. He arrives in Darwin and learns that General MacArthur is there.
Wow.
Back in Washington, President Roosevelt has approved a change to the Selective Service Act on December 20, 1941. Filipinos in the U.S. are now able to enlist in the Army.
Thank God.
On February 23, 1942, the Filipino Infantry Battalion is officially activated in Central California. From their training camp in San Luis Obispo, word spreads across the country that volunteers are needed.
I tell you, there was practically a race to get in. I mean, I was so surprised. There was just so many that signed up almost immediately.
Well, in San Francisco, that's all we heard about. There was a Filipino organization, Army unit that was being formed in Salinas. And then all of the young fellows in our group said, when we go in the Army, if we get drafted and go in the Army, let's all go to the first field. And that's what we did.
It just shows their bravery and their brotherhood and just their, the warrior spirit that's in them, their homeland. I mean, the homeland, the soil of the Philippines is under attack. And they're ready to spill their blood if it comes down to it, to protect it. I mean, they wrote letters. They convinced the U.S. government of, hey, We should be over there. We should be fighting. We should be defending. We should be kicking the Japanese out. Let us. Let us. Let us. And they are. It's an amazing story, and a story that needs to be told, and I'm so glad. But let's keep continuing on. It's already gave me a couple of tears, I'm not gonna lie.
I wanted to join the regiment because I remember when they were having meal, they always had rice, and part of my menu was to have rice in my meal. I grew up eating rice, and if I only ate bread, I didn't have enough stamina.
As the regiments continue their training, they keep track of the desperate situation on the Bataan Peninsula. The courage and bravery of Bataan's defenders inspire them and intensify their desire to return.
So they're brothers, you know? You don't leave brothers behind.
We were hoping that he'd come back with replacements and ammunition and food and all that, but that thing never came. Instead, the Japanese were the ones that got the reinforcements.
Kept coming, kept coming.
And so they launched a very heavy attack on us. No way for us to retreat. So with little ammo that we have, with little food that we have, we just kept on fighting. And finally, we got the orders to surrender.
Oh.
We didn't want to surrender, but the order was for us to lay down our arms. From that point that we were marched to concentration.
Death march.
That's where the death march started.
That's a terrible thing. The death
In
march.
the sweltering April heat, some 70,000 American and Filipino prisoners of war began a brutal forced march that would take them 100 miles to an inhumane incarceration. Ill and undernourished, these soldiers are denied food and water for many days and are beaten and killed randomly by Japanese troops. During most of the march and a train ride in boxcars, some escape, but thousands die.
And it makes me so sad because nowadays people fight and argue over the stupidest things. You know, this generation truly is spoiled because there's conflicts and battles and things that rise up, you know, here, there, sort of like Marawi. That was a terrible thing, and the Filipino people did an awesome job of extinguishing that. But as far as like the millions of people here, there, we have it easy because these days were tough. These days were bad. These days were strong. These days were hurtful. These days was uncertain. And it's, you know, we got to show our respect to stories like this. And they're not told enough. And this generation needs to know.
There were instances along the way when someone gets unable to keep up the pace, start falling on the wayside. So rather than allow the Japanese to shoot them, we help them walk and reach the next destination of the march. Many times I feel faint because probably of hunger, because of heat. And so a friend of mine or the one beside me, sometimes I didn't know who he was, and he would help me walk. You know, in my prayers, I always pray that I be strong enough so that I could reach the destination.
You were strong enough because you're here talking.
When we arrived with Donald, we were assembled in groups. A few days later, we heard that the Americans were moved to Cabanatuan. In the camp, you'll see your friends dying of dysentery, of malaria. You know, you see them shaking with high fever, and there's nothing you can do. So if you're sick with dysentery, you die slowly.
And you know it.
Sometimes you just leave yourself right there in place. And of course, the next person would just have to, to clean him and take care of him.
And that's just so hard, watching your friend, your fellow. I mean, when you're fighting along side by side with somebody else, that's family. It may not be blood, but it is blood. And you gotta watch them die, and they know they're gonna die because there's no cure, and you're stuck in this camp. Like, how hard does it get? How hard can it be? It's just terrible.
One dies, he's usually carried in his woolen blanket. The ends are tied in the pole, and the pole is carried by two men. There seems to be an endless procession of the dead when they go to this grave site, which is nothing more than a big hole where the bodies are dumped.
All those loved ones that's lost.
So when I was designated to be one of those carriers, I prayed hard and says, Lord God, please spare me.
(1942), California.
The surrender at Bataan and the Bataan Death March reverberate beyond the Pacific. Determined to avenge their homeland, thousands of Filipino immigrants in the U.S. continue to join the Filipino Infantry Battalion. The unit's strength mushrooms to more than 7,000 officers and enlisted.
Inspiring. So inspiring.
It is clear that the battalion will have to be designated a regiment, and additional training camps needed to accommodate the swelling numbers.
A lot of the Filipinos, when they came to this country, they came here at a young age when they left the island.
Right.
And they left their relatives, their brothers and sisters.
And they're there.
It was their duty to go back to fight the Japanese that invaded the Philippines. And that was in their heart that they wanted to go back.
Wow.
Well, I was drafted, and I volunteered for the 1st Filipino Infantry Regiment, and lo and behold, I didn't see any soldiers that was of my age. These soldiers that I did see were at least, in the mid-30s, I'd even say in the 40s.
Right, that's usually not common.
There were some people that lied about their age just to stay in the Army. I knew of two fellas that must have been 50 years old.
Wow.
At that time. Another amazing thing was their physical condition. I had a hell of a time trying to keep up with them. They were strong as an ox because I guess of their field work.
Wow.
And they could go on a 20-mile hike. I'd be dying at the end of the 20-mile hike, and they'd say, let's go another 20. Not me.
When I joined the regiment, I was 18 and a half years old. The young and the old, we were mixed together, and they took care of me. My first sergeant, Regala, he was just like my dad.
I felt that the regiment, the Filipino soldiers, should have some sort of entertainment. I invited all the Filipino young women that I knew from Oakland, from Stockton and San Francisco, and we visited the army camp. And we had our dances. We had a very good band. They were all from the people from the regiment themselves that formed those bands. When we came here, they would make those lechon, and that had to be done outdoors. They would dig a hole in the ground and then start rolling the pig. And we had all kinds. They played volleyball, they played sipa. Both regiments had a nice time.
SIPA's like hacky sack, kind of, I think.
The Bureau of Immigration and Naturalization encourages the Philippine-born men to become American citizens. During the month of February 1943, more than half of the regiments take oaths of allegiance and loyalty, embracing America as their own.
Wow.
On one day in February, 1,200 of these Filipinos become U.S. citizens.
I was there, but that's when that was a special day.
That is a special day.
Mass formation. Oh, they were very proud of the fact that they can get their citizenship in this way. And they had all these dignitaries from Hollywood and whatnot Stars, Carol Landis, and them were there, and that's the reason I went, because Carol Landis.
This, I don't know whether I should be crying or laughing in this documentary. Like, everybody's got to see this documentary, especially if you're American or Filipino. It needs to be seen.
I was already a citizen.
In his plan to retake the Philippines and invade Japan, General MacArthur's watchword has been to spare as many American and Filipino lives as possible. This will require placing secret operatives behind enemy lines throughout the Philippine archipelago.
It's a dangerous job.
These secret mission men will be handpicked from the 1st and 2nd Filipino Infantry Regiments by Lieutenant Colonel Courtney Whitney, General MacArthur's trusted friend and confidant.
I need to know these guys. I need to know
We
who
were
they
at
are.
Hunter Liggett Military Reservation, which was the maneuver training site for all the Army troops. And our regiment was going through maneuvers. And during this time period, a lot of us were interviewed. They would ask me, are you married? Do you have any other dependents? Do you have any children?
Right.
How much schooling did you have?
They probably want single people going.
Filipino dialects, things of that nature. And I never thought. After the interview, after a weekend pass, come Monday, we'd see some empty bunks. And we were wondering what happened to them.
They called the names off. There's 50 of us, but I did not know what I was going to do. We left Camp Cook to go to Presidio Monterey. That's where I started mine. Learned radio, recognition, recon, map reading, compass.
So he's a
Tried
badass.
to cram everything, I guess, in our heads at once.
Badass.
I think we stayed there maybe 6 weeks or so. Finished our course, and they told us we're going to port of embarkation. I don't recall how long we stayed there. But I know one thing, it was a long trip going to Australia. We had 21 days at sea.
I bet.
The first shipment of trainees from the 1st and 2nd Filipino Infantry Regiments reaches Australia on May 11, 1943, and joins the 52 17th Reconnaissance Battalion, the unit headed by Colonel Whitney. They are taken to Camp X, the Allied Intelligence Bureau's secret training facility outside of Brisbane.
Camp X.
They came and picked us up and took us to Camp X, which we were out in the boondocks. And then from there, we met the other Filipino men that were there, that were ahead of us.
When the Filipino regiment came in from the U.S., I got discharged from the hospital and put me with the Filipino regiment.
He's going back.
At the heart of the 52 17th Reconnaissance Battalion is the 978th Signal Service Company. Some of its officers will act as team leaders for the U.S. Filipino operatives. Others in the company will serve as training personnel.
And they showed us how to fight in the jungle, what weapons to use, and so on. Then we'd go back to camp, learn radio again, reconnaissance,
There's
go
some
map
badasses.
so on.
Oh.
I chose demolition because of the noise, I guess, would be involved in it.
You like the boom.
As one man said, baby, you got guts anyway, you might as well.
For a select group of U.S. Filipinos in the Reconnaissance Battalion, parachute training forms the last stage of their intensive training at Camp X.
Making Scout Rangers.
Soldiers were very small men. My senior sergeant from the 503rd told me, he said, Lieutenant, we're going to have trouble with those men because I think they're going to float around if we have any thermal currents. And I said, I think you're right.
Big things come in small packages, I'm telling you.
Got some BAR ammunition belts and put
big
pieces
hearts
of metal and put these on the smaller Filipinos so that they would come back a little bit faster, because if the wind blew, they could be in the next county or wherever, you know.
Province, not county. We're talking Philippines here. Not United States.
A dramatic and dangerous rescue mission requiring volunteers put some of Captain Walter's Filipino paratroopers to the test. 11 of them sign on. A U.S. Army C-47 transport plane carrying 24 Army personnel has crashed into a mountainside in a remote part of New Guinea. 3 injured survivors have managed to climb down from the site of the burning wreck. An Army search plane has spotted them in an uncharted valley, bounded by jungle and towering mountains.
Wow.
Awaiting rescuers are WAC Corporal Margaret Hastings and the other 2 survivors, Lieutenant John McCollum and Tech Sergeant Kenneth Decker. Both Hastings and Decker have been badly burned, and gangrene is setting in. With no sure way to get themselves and the survivors out, the rescue indeed seemed suicidal. Even so, Walter's Filipino paratroopers are ready for the jump.
Fearless. They don't leave people behind.
Above a dangerous
We've learned
rocky
that.
field and wooded area, medics Camilo Ramirez and Ben Bulatao are dropped in first.
We figured out that once we got medics to them, that would suffice to take care of them while we went into the main part of the valley and laid out a glider landing strip. The only answer was a glider landing and then a glider pickup to get us out of there.
We treat them every day, morning and night, for about a month and a half.
When Ben thought it was time that we could do it,
He's a survivor.
we got up on one rainy day and decided we'd go and got out, hiked down to our main camp. The boys had a big feed fixed up for us, and things went quite well.
Big piece of
there
meat.
on out.
Pretty soon there was a glider coming in, a circle, towed by C-47, down, 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 until they hit. Captain Walter announced that the survivors and the medic would ride first.
Oh, absolutely.
We could see from the window that they were trying to put 2 poles and put the rope around it, just like slingshot, and connect to the glider.
The C-47 roars down in a power dive, and the riders brace themselves for a sudden lurch. In seconds, the glider is sliding down the strip and leaves the ground, climbing above the trees and valley. After a 90-minute ride back to the base, it sets down in a perfect landing. The riders are greeted by a horde of photographers and reporters who will send their story, dubbed the Shangri-La Mission, around the world.
Shangri-La
Every
mission.
time I would think of the rescues
Shangri-La.
and think of the men, was how little fear these men had.
None.
We had no refusals, no hesitations, I mean, about jumping. And they were all gung-ho, ready to go. Well, I should say bahala not.
General MacArthur continues to pull men out of the regiments as he intensifies his clandestine war against the Japanese in the Philippines. A war being vigorously waged by thousands of American and Filipino guerrilla forces.
At that time, when they were pulling these men out, they reduced the rank of the regiment. But those people that left us were replaced by the 2nd Regiment people. So when we went overseas in April, 44, we were a full-strength regiment.
Right.
Some 3,800 men.
3,800.
Across the Pacific on the General John S. Pope landed in Buna, New Guinea. There were more selection of men. They went to Alamo Scouts, and they went to the AIB or Australia. The unit was really decimated again, and then when the 2nd Battalion came over, we refilled.
The Allied Intelligence Bureau was keenly aware of the grave dangers that these Filipino mission men faced.
Death.
In assessing these dangerous missions, Colonel Whitney writes, "Each agent would enter the Philippines with a high price on his head. The task ahead of him, the hazards of which there are few counterparts in military history, means he will become instantly the object of merciless hunt by both enemy and many of his own people."
I was ordered.
And those are super strong, scary words. Like these words, this is being told to them, and they don't blink twice. They're like, let's go. We got to go save our country, our soil, our brothers, our sisters, our family. You know, just amazing.
Headquarters, I said the old man wants to talk to us. You are who? Sergeant Liu Hiram. Sit down, this is the boy I want to
Tokto, this is my son.
Wow.
You're going there to the Philippines to tell me what you saw. Tell me what the Japanese are doing. Tell me how big or how strong they are.
Spy.
Tell me if they're young or old. Because if they're young, they are good fighters. If they're old, they are beginning to get lazy. So tell me how much food they have. Tell me how many more young soldiers they have left. He said, I cannot win a war for you. I don't know the whole thing about what the Japanese are doing.
Right.
After the interview, you are the boy for me. Then we get to Manila, there will be shining bar waiting for you.
That's a super
Shining bar,
important
what does it look
job.
like? Not shining bar. Unless we survive.
What a job. That's
By the spring of 1944, General MacArthur's submarines are routinely moving in and out of Philippine waters, delivering supplies to guerrilla leaders and dropping off secret operatives. Back in Australia, MacArthur is finalizing plans for the invasion of the Philippines. However, his superiors in Washington and the top Navy command want to bypass the Philippines on the way to invading Japan. It will take a great push to convince them to follow his lead. For Colonel Daniel Leda, the day that MacArthur returns can come none too soon.
Yeah.
In a public relations ploy, the Japanese have freed him, along with other gravely ill and dying Filipinos, from their imprisonment at Camp O'Donnell. Having recovered, he has joined the guerrillas.
There were always rumors that MacArthur's forces were gaining grounds from Australia. Of course, we heard later they were leapfrogging from island to island in the Pacific, recapturing those places where the Japanese had occupied them.
Right.
Our hope never faltered that MacArthur will return. And so, with that thought, we continued our resistance in the Philippines. We organized units there only to harass the Japanese,
Hearts
to
of
gain
lions.
intelligence, which is the main thing, really gaining intelligence, and to pass it on to Australia.
Late 1943, we noticed that the Allies had been already starting to come back. That was the time when the underground movement, they mobilized my father, the regimental doctor. He would tell us about how these guys from Australia, they were brought in by submarine, and there were some Filipino guys too that came in from Australia, and they were part of the underground movement. And I was really I remember that I was really excited. I said, wow, MacArthur's coming back.
Yes, he said he would.
Before the U.S. Filipinos arrive in Australia, General MacArthur has been sending teams of men by submarine to the Philippines. These were American and Filipino officers and enlisted men who were already in Australia.
Side by side.
Now, at the turn of 1944, the big push is to blanket the Philippine Islands with the secret mission men trained in Australia. Men from the 1st and 2nd Filipino Infantry Regiments. Now designated the 1st Reconnaissance Battalion Special, they will be led by men from the 978th Signal Service Company.
Thank you, Australia, also.
Declassified after-action reports and first-person interviews provide an inside look at their missions and the roles they played in the retaking of the Philippines.
The most important roles, I'd have to say. Vital.
There were 32 of us, including 6 officers.
We all had different thoughts, but nobody would really come out and say anything to us about what to expect.
There was no place to move around. We had to sleep on top of boxes of explosives.
And I was scared. I'll tell you the truth. I was scared.
I would be too.
We were getting ready to fire 2 torpedoes when we heard 3 successive explosions. We could feel the bursts inside the submarine. I kept praying to God and calling out the names of all the saints.
We were told to get ready to land. The signal from the beach had been sent and received.
You need God on your
At
side.
7 p.m., the submarine anchored about 1.5 miles offshore. Hundreds of guerrillas worked all night unloading the submarine.
I see everybody kissing the ground, excited about being in the Philippines.
Powerful
I
images.
made a reconnaissance trip to the interior of the island looking for positions for our net control station. 2 days later, we established our station, ISRM, for I shall return MacArthur. We had hardly rested when the whole village began pouring in to greet us. Oh my God, I whispered to myself, were these my people? Destitute skeletons, all due to sickness and hunger? I hurriedly opened our medical box, prepared a dispensary, and began treating the sick. Being the eve before Christmas, my buddies opened our rations and gave the villagers their first real Christmas in 3 years.
Wow. Powerful images. Images that need
We
to be
took to the
seen.
mountains where we could have a good look at the open sea. I installed my antenna and started calling our station in South Negros. We flashed all of our important messages. Every transport that we sighted.
We were on the air an average 6 hours a day.
The Japanese guy is always waiting. As soon as he hears the key, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, then he stop. I know he's waiting. So what we do, put a second station in here, operating at a different frequency.
Members of the team knew that they were acting as spies, and if they were caught, they were executed.
On the spot, I'm sure.
We had pledged to one another that if one of us got captured, he must keep his mouth shut, even unto death. While retrieving some equipment, my radio operator was captured by the enemy.
They took him to the plaza, tortured him there until he died.
By now, the secret mission men have established more than 120 radio stations and some 25 weather stations strategically placed throughout the Philippine archipelago. And MacArthur's Ghost Army of thousands of Philippine guerrillas is organized, armed and ready to strike a heavy blow at invasion time.
We were ordered to join guerrilla units in different sectors as a demolition party. Our mission was to blow up bridges and destroy communications.
Right.
Then the order came to strike at 0200. It was like the 4th of July.
Woo. We're back.
Now get this. These are the Philippines.
And they told us to come into this room. They showed a map. And it says, this is where you're going to land. This is in the Philippines. They told us that this was going to be the advanced group for MacArthur. We got to be the eyes and ears now. We got to do this right. I don't know how many days at sea.
Legendary
All I know, one morning we woke up and I looked in behind us, in front of us, all this big kind of heavy cruisers. Americans, Australians. Man, what do we get ourselves into? Look at all this.
It's big. It's big. It's on.
After 2.5 years of his forces driving their way up from Australia and through the Pacific to retake the region from the Japanese enemy, General MacArthur now focuses on reaching the Philippines. Invasion forces stream toward Leyte Gulf. The separate commands of General MacArthur and Admiral Chester Nimitz merge to form a formidable armada of warships. The 3rd Fleet, commanded by Admiral William Bull Halsey, and the 7th Fleet, led by Admiral William Kincaid, include 17 fleet and escort carriers, 12 battleships, 28 cruisers, 150 destroyers, and hundreds of amphibious vessels.
And you need them all.
On board
Every
are
one of
Lieutenant General George Kenny's 5th Air Force of 1,500 aircraft and Lieutenant General Walter Kruger's 6th Army of 6 divisions totaling 200,000 men. Among MacArthur's landing forces are his teams of specialists from the 1st and 2nd Filipino Infantry Regiments. These units will be used to conduct counterintelligence work and to help re-establish order and civil affairs during the liberation period.
landing back in the Philippines made everybody so elated, of course, to finally see their homeland and to find out how their families had fared during that war.
Even in danger, they're
Going
joyful.
back there as an officer did not mean much difference to me. Just going back there made me very happy.
Yes.
Determined to hold Leyte at all costs, Japanese reinforcement troops engaged the 6th Army forces in a protracted campaign. It will last 3 weeks and end on Christmas Day, 1944.
Wow.
The fighting at Breakneck Ridge will claim 15,500 American lives and 60,000 Japanese casualties.
Whew. That's some fierce fighting.
In surrounding waters, the greatest naval battle in U.S. history is being waged. The battle for Leyte Gulf involves the entire Imperial Japanese combined fleet of 70 major warships. For 3 days, the Japanese hold nothing back, believing the war will be lost if they fail in the Battle of Leyte Gulf. This battle knocks Japan's navy out of the war.
Ouch. Ouch.
With Leyte Island now secure, General MacArthur prepares for the final assault, the conquest of the Central Philippines and the retaking of Manila. January 4th, 1945. The largest naval convoy in the history of the Pacific heads for Lingayen Gulf.
You can smell victory. You know it? Once you got that island.
We didn't encounter any enemy at that time because we were told that the Japanese were hiding in the mountain or they retreated back to the mountain, which was a good sign.
Yeah,
with the
strategy,
Japanese
but yeah,
pulling
good
back,
sign.
American forces land unopposed. Then, it is a 110-mile march south to Manila for 68,000 U.S. troops. They push inland and engage in fierce battles to dislodge the Japanese from their numerous entrenched positions.
In mountains,
Many of the encounters
jungles.
are bloody and brutal. As troops enter villages, they are confronted with unimaginable casualties and atrocities.
It's hard.
We happened to went into one of the villages, the Japanese. They had a trench already dug. They had the families all standing on the trench. The mothers with the babies and everything. Took the babies and threw the babies in there and hold the baby in it. Let the baby come right on in there. When they did that, it really hurt me.
Oh.
That could be my...
Scarred for life. If you're human, it scars you for
And
life.
from then on, I said, no more prisoners. I'm not going to take no prisoners. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to, get rid of them.
As General MacArthur's liberation forces rapidly advance toward Manila, the Japanese army begins retaliating against its prisoners of war. At a prison camp
War
in Puerto
crimes.
Princesa, a massacre of American POWs is confirmed by one of General MacArthur's secret mission teams. 152 POWs were herded together and burned alive.
Oh my God.
With others starving and in danger of similar reprisals by a desperate and disorganized enemy, General MacArthur steps up efforts to conduct rescue operations on other POW camps. One of his immediate targets is Cabanatuan Prison, 25 miles behind enemy lines. Guarded by a Japanese garrison of 150 men, it is protected by thousands of troops in the vicinity. Word is that the Japanese plan to move or execute some 500 POWs
My
there.
goodness.
Among them are American troops from the Bataan Death March. The planned assault involves 121 men selected from the elite 6th Army Rangers. Assisting them are 2 guerrilla units operating north of the prison camp. Near Cabanatuan Prison, 2 Alamos scout teams, led by Lieutenants Bill Nellist and Tom Rounsaville, begin operating surreptitiously. Some of the men dress as natives and hide out in huts. gathering information from the locals who work at the camp.
Filipinos saving American
One of the Brownsville
lives.
team was a young man from Hawaii, a tech sergeant by the name Alfred Alfonso, known as Opu.
Well, reconnaissance that scouts did when we went up there was to see what is set up in the camp, where the prisoners were sleeping, where the Japanese were sleeping, and who was at the front gate, how many up at the towers at one
Intel.
when they changed guards, how they changed guards, one at a time, or 2 or 3 walk to the gate or whatever, see, and then when they go to lunch or when they go out in the field and exercise, things like that. All the information we can find and to let the rangers know what's happening.
We started at dark. There was a full moon, by the way. I remember that. I looked up, but to me it looked like a full moon.
Right.
And the biggest problem was the front gate. They had a big lock at the front gate. Because when the colonel, not the colonel, but the lieutenant went up to shoot at the lock, he didn't broke it. He tried with his butt of the rifle, couldn't, so he got his 45 and shot. A lot of them didn't believe us.
They first didn't know what was happening.
We're Americans.
We're saving you.
Get out, get to the front gate.
Right, we're here.
2 Rangers were killed, 3 were wounded, and all the rest were casualties among the guerrilla forces, who played such an important role in isolating the area and preventing Japanese reinforcements from coming in. They fought the major battle, and they inflicted the major casualties on the enemy. And they also suffered the major losses.
Thank you.
They made that raid possible. So there's an indication of what the Philippine soldier can do.
Oh.
It didn't take us long.
Fierce.
All the prisoners out.
The raid on Cabanatuan Prison marks a high point of cooperation between the 6th Army's Rangers, Philippine guerrillas, Alamo Scouts, and conventional American combat units. It will prove to be one of the most successful missions of its type in U.S. military history.
U.S. Philippine history. Let's correct that. Because one without the other is not succeeding.
We could see Intramuros in flame from where we were at. It was so bad that the flame, you could see it 200-300 feet in the air. Intramuros was a fortified site that was called the Walled City.
Walled City.
That's where the Japanese were. And at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, we were told to go in.
From jungle to urban war.
The scene that greeted us in Manila was very depressing. Manila was devastated. All the buildings were down in rubbles. We could still smell the stench of death. And I often wondered why Manila was so devastated, because as I understand, Manila was declared as an open city. Yet he was purely destroyed.
Devastated. Looks like Marawi
I was
did.
with the Philippine Civil Affairs Unit number 20. Our main purpose was to give relief and find jobs for the civilians, to help those that are in need of food, clothing, or whatever the need may be. Each person had a specific job to do. Those in the medical field, they had their job to do. Those in the giving out food to the civilian, they had their job to do. I was also a Jeep driver, and I could see where the ladies and the young girls were all wearing burlap sack. They had no clothes. And I know they were hungry.
Hurts to see his hurt.
So we would relay back to the command post and tell them that there were children out here that needed clothes and food.
Hurts to see children hurt.
In March 1945, a shipload of replacement troops from California lands in Leyte. Among them are 50 young men from Hawaii, American-born and sons of Filipino immigrants, ages 18 to 20. They are assigned to the 1st Filipino Infantry Regiment, now involved in mop-up operations.
They took us by barge to the island of Samar. Then they marched us up into the hills. We dropped 4 boys here, another 5 boys there, and then we were in the battle zone.
There's 12 of us per squad, and each squad is isolated from another. You're on your own. Everything is on your own. So if you take anybody out of that squad, in which we have such an area to guard, forget it. All I can say is see the whites of the eyes, make sure they're down.
While we
End
were
it, kill it.
in camp, we were all hearing about people picking up souvenirs, you know. And when I read Time magazine, these guys were talking about swords, and so this one day, I happened to get up on a hill, maybe about 2 minutes before I heard someone cutting grass, and it was a Japanese soldier coming up. So I took a prone position, and I was thinking, in training, take the prone position and squeeze.
Right.
Before I knew it, the gun went off. So that Japanese fellow just dropped. And that was the first time I had encountered the enemy, and I didn't pull the trigger. It just went. The next morning, I had to lead the troops down that path that this Japanese had cut. And when I went down, I figured I'd take a souvenir. So I cut the string around his neck. That night, when I peeled the rag to see what was in it, I saw a lock of hair and a picture of his family. It really brought all the stupidity of what we were doing. Because here this young fellow was still all of his people with him in such a dangerous position.
Life's fragile, life's precious.
Manuel and I were in our pup tent. News that America dropped the atomic bomb. The war was over. As we thought of the events of the 3 past days, we cried like kids, knowing it was all over.
Yes. How could you not?
I now invite the representatives of the Emperor of Japan and the Japanese government and the Japanese Imperial General Headquarters to sign the instrument of surrender at the places indicated.
You can't even smile, you gotta cry.
So the regiment got together in Dulag, and it was then that we noticed that the old-timers came with different patches. They were PCOWs, they were Alamo Scouts, they were the reconnaissance team, and they were CIC. It was only then that the Hawaii boys really realized the depths of what these old-timers did. We had no idea that they had defeated MacArthur, in collecting data and watching the ships. And then and only then did we begin to feel the pride in the men of the regiment.
Feel it. Feel it. Ah. Gosh.
I am authorized and directed by the President of the United States to proclaim the independence of the Philippines as a separate and self-governing nation.
Me and a couple of boys, we took leave on Independence Day. As far as your eyes can see is all people. We had to park our Jeep away from town and walk with the crowd. The bridges was like ants all over the whole city.
With this ceremony, a new nation is born.
There was pandemonium around. All the people were just shouting and showing the exuberance. All of a sudden they started playing an American military tune, and I looked up. Now as I watched the Filipino flag being raised in the place of the U.S. flag, I was just a mixture of emotions. I felt very proud that I was a Filipino. Now, the Philippines, once again, belong to the Filipinos.
As it should have, all along.
I might not come back alive. I didn't think I could make it. But thank God I did come home alive. We went underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, and it was a beautiful sight for me to see. I never thought I'd see that bridge again. It means that you're home. That's what it means. That you're home.
So many thoughts, so many emotions while you watch this. I don't know if you felt the same emotions I did, but I'm guessing you probably did. Maybe more emotions, I don't know, especially if you're Filipino. But it showed the courage. It showed the never give up attitude. It showed the strength of these older Filipino men. You know, they said they're late 30s, 40s, 50s, and they weren't going to get to fight. But they fought for that. They fought for the right to die for, you know, not only the United States, but fight for the right to die for the Philippines, the soil that these people, these brave warriors were born on. I mean, that speaks volumes. This is a very touching documentary. Like I said, it's a documentary that all of us should see. There's not many views on this documentary, and I don't know why. It needs to be found. So hopefully, you know, you found this and you watched it all and you enjoyed it enough to share. You can either share my reaction or you can share the original link. It doesn't matter, as long as it gets seen, it gets spread. It needs to touch all our hearts, especially the young hearts that's younger than us, that's not taught this. Like, you can learn so much from this video. So if you liked it, definitely share it. But I had so many emotions going through. I want to know what you're thinking about this video, because there's just so much to it. I learned so much. There's a lot of people throughout history that was mentioned in this video that I want to do research and make other videos about, and we're going to do that. Anyway, like I said, if you like it, definitely share your comments, your feelings, your reactions down below. Let me know what you're thinking, because I love to read each and every one of your comments. Anyway, I'll see you next time. I'm emotionally exhausted. I'll see you next time. Peace.